First, they try and make Beto O'Rourke the second coming of Jesus, and basically try to make him Obama 2.0. And then they're also trying to make Kamala Harris seem progressive. They're trying to make Cory Booker seem progressive. All these things. But Joe Biden is the corporate media's favorite fake progressive. I wouldn't even call him a moderate. I mean, Joe Biden, if you put him up next to Hillary Clinton, frankly, he's the same thing, just with different body parts. He voted for everything Hillary Clinton voted for. He's a better campaigner. Maybe I think he's able to inspire more people because he's, frankly, good at conning people. But in practice, he's Hillary Clinton. All of his voting record, everything. So the latest is a New York Times piece that's essentially doing PR, public relations, for Joe Biden. So apparently Joe Biden, what his allies are trying to say is he's deciding whether to run, and he thinks he's the only one that could beat Donald Trump. Based on what rationale? Who knows? Former Vice President Biden is in the final stages of deciding whether to run for president and has told allies he is skeptical of the other Democrats eyeing the White House can defeat President Trump, an assessment that foreshadows a clash between the veteran Washington insider and the more liberal and fresh-faced contenders for the 2020 nomination. Many Democratic voters and nearly all major Democratic donors are keenly interested in Mr. Biden's plans because of their consuming focus on finding a candidate who could beat a president they believe represents a threat to American democracy. But there is also a rising demand in the party for a more progressive standard bearer who reflects the increasingly diverse Democratic coalition. That's actually not true. The progressive base that's demanding a progressive candidate, we don't really care if he's white, if he's black, if he's a man, if he's a woman. We care if he's progressive and is right on the policies. But as usual, the New York Times political wizards get it wrong. It's not a demographics thing. It's not making sure we have a woman nominee or a black nominee or a purple nominee. We need somebody that is actually for policies that will lift the working class and close the income gap and lift our planet. Mr. Biden would instantly be the early frontrunner if he ran. Still don't know where that's coming from because Bernie Sanders is the most popular politician in the country and he hasn't even announced. So I have no idea where the New York Times is coming with this. Why exactly would Joe Biden be the instant frontrunner? Maybe with the pundits on TV, but when Bernie Sanders is in the race and Joe Biden is in the race, why would Joe Biden instantly be the frontrunner? And the hidden thing that they don't like to tell you, these polls that they've been doing that show Joe Biden at the top, they show that part of the people that they reach out to are on landlines. Part of them are on cell phones, but they don't generally give you the age breakdown. They don't generally give you the age breakdown of who they're polling. I wonder why. Because they're not polling an equal amount of younger people than they are polling an equal amount of older people. Because obviously, if you're calling landlines, how many young people, and I'm not trying to offend the older audience, how many young people have a landline phone? Frankly, at this point, how many older people have a landline phone? Landlines are kind of out of style at this point. So the polling that has Biden in some polls like 10 points above Bernie, I don't really believe it. And if you look at these polls, if they were breaking down, okay, in a lot of these polls, they generally poll between 1,000 and 1,200 people. If they actually said, okay, we polled 300 people from 18 to 29. We polled 300 people from 34 to 50. We polled 300 people from 50 to 65. We polled 300 people from 65 and up. Then I would take it seriously. But none of these polls show that. So I don't really think that they're polling the actual cross-section of voters. And I'm not saying Bernie's only young voters. I know he's got a lot of older voters. But obviously millennials and young people skew heavily towards Bernie. I don't know where the New York Times is getting that he would be the front runner. That's probably just their wishful thinking because they're all establishment arrogant fucks. Mr. Biden would instantly be the front runner, but he would have to bridge divides in a primary that would test whether Democrats are willing to embrace a moderate white man. He's not moderate, he's Republican. White man in his 70s if they view him as the best bet to oust Mr. Trump. Quote, He has the best chance of beating Trump's hands down, said establishment Senator Tom Carper of Delaware, Mr. Biden's longtime friend and former colleague. On a scale of 1 to 10, that's probably around a 12 for us. So you see what I'm saying, that this is just public relations for Joe Biden? They're not actually putting any facts in here. Yet Mr. Biden's skepticism about the field could alienate female and minority voters who are excited that several women and African Americans are expected to run. Nominating a white man may also roil some Democrats who are already torn about whether a woman could win in 2020 after Clinton's loss. They shouldn't be torn whether a woman can win. They should be torn whether a corporate establishment candidate could win, because we already told you they can't. The country has spoken. And Biden's preoccupation with winning back blue-collar Midwestern whites could place him at odds with Democrats who see greater potential for growth in the highly educated suburbs and across the booming Sunbelt and upper South. More broadly, debate around Mr. Biden's possible candidacy illustrates the dueling visions in the party, and particularly in the divisions between its pragmatic and liberal wing. Some Democrats are skeptical that a relatively moderate candidate like Biden, who has baggage like supporting the 1990s crime bill that is loathed on the left. You notice how the New York Times, who kind of knows how to research things, left out that he didn't support it. He drafted it. He wrote the crime bill. But we'll leave that out. Would prevail in the primary with a message of unity and national healing. But the best part of this propaganda piece, Mr. Biden's enthusiasts are also quick to note that he is not just popular with white working class voters, but is also well liked among African Americans and millennials. Really? Really? Is that so? Is there a poll that shows Joe Biden is wildly popular among millennials? I'd like to see that poll. I'd like to see the poll where Joe Biden is wildly popular among millennial voters. You want to know why? Because it doesn't exist. And honestly, I don't really know what they're talking about that he's so popular among black people. Maybe he was popular when he was Barack Obama's vice president, but individually, as his own entity, please. So many things about this. Number one, I was very critical of Hillary Clinton, so I'm going to be equally critical of Joe Biden. Joe Biden is Hillary Clinton with a penis. So, I'm keeping it real. Joe Biden voted for NAFTA. NAFTA decimated the Rust Belt and the Midwest. So this whole notion that Joe Biden thinks he could win back those blue-collar working voters, he voted for NAFTA. NAFTA decimated Ohio. NAFTA decimated Wisconsin. It decimated Ohio. It decimated Pennsylvania. It decimated large parts of Illinois. Like, I don't understand. I mean, I do understand their propaganda, but do they think like Ohio and these states aren't going to know that? Because I could tell you, I was at a lot of Trump rallies. He had them at NAFTA, as I always tell you. This region of the country and other regions of the country have been decimated by NAFTA. He also was one of the cheerleaders for TPP. When Trump was railing on the campaign trail against TPP, Biden was trying to ram it through along with President Obama. So this whole blue-collar Joe thing is a fantasy. It's not reality. And his record will come out in the age of social media, independent media. He can't hide it. But you want to talk about African Americans? Not Hillary Clinton was first lady when the crime bill. So she supported it. But Joe Biden was not only a senator who voted for it, Joe Biden drafted the crime bill, which ushered in the era of mass incarceration. When I was in South Carolina before that primary, let me tell you something. There was a hell of a lot of black people that did not like Hillary Clinton because they knew her husband, Bill Clinton, signed that crime bill. Well, how are black voters going to feel when they know that Joe Biden drafted it? Joe Biden also voted for welfare reform that disproportionately threw minority mothers and single mothers off welfare. That spun as reform. Joe Biden also voted for the banking deregulation, the repeal of Glass-Steagall, and other giveaways to Wall Street. Why? Because look how much money he took from Wall Street. Senator Middle Class Joe. Guy took $6.5 million from financial attorneys. When you see the lawyers and law firms category, that is financial lawyers. It ain't lawyers for the ACLU, folks. It ain't lawyers for Code Pink. These are financial services attorneys. $6.5 million in his career. $1.4 million real estate developers. $1.1 million Wall Street. And by the way, Joe Biden predominantly, actually exclusively, he was a senator when super PACs were not in existence. Super PACs came into existence after he was a senator. So he did not have, let me guess how much money this would have went up if he had access to super PACs. Business services, $563,000. Miscellaneous financial, whatever the hell that means, $555,000. Pro-Israel, $477,000. Lobbyists, $436,000. Such a middle-class steward, this Joe Biden character. I don't see a lot of things that aren't finance and big business and corporations there, but you're never going to see this on CNN, will you? So not only did he vote to deregulate Wall Street, not only did he vote for the repeal of Glass-Steagall, not only did he vote for NAFTA, not only did he vote for welfare reform, not only did he vote to deregulate the media, not only did he vote for capital gains tax cuts, he co-authored, I believe, or was one of the sponsors on the Patriot Act. Yes, that Patriot Act. That kind of has taken away your privacy, civil liberties, all of that. Has ushered in the era of spying on you. He was an author of that. Voted for the Iraq War. Also voted for the bankruptcy bill. That made it pretty impossible for, families that were in trouble to file for bankruptcy protections. Here's an article from Salon. In light of what occurred in its wake, this law is easily one of the most disgraceful aspects of the Bush and Biden legacies. The harm it did to middle-class Americans, especially during the crushing events of the recession 4 years later, is immeasurable. The bill made it nearly impossible for average families to file Chapter 7 bankruptcy protection, also known as clean slate bankruptcies, intended to discharge nearly all debts a matter of a few years before they'd need it the most. The bill instituted an all-new means test to determine whether debtors with insurmountable financial hardships earned enough income to pay back all or part of their unsecured debt, specifically credit debt. If they earned too much, a clean slate bankruptcy became impossible, and they'd be forced to file Chapter 13, which would force debtors to pay back their debt over a 5-year timeline, thus legalizing neo-indentured servitude to creditors. Among other things, the bill also forced debtors to enroll in a, quote, instructional course concerning personal financial management. This requirement still exists, even though there's still little evidence of its efficacy. Additionally, the bill made it more difficult to force creditors to stop harassing debtors for repayment after bankruptcy protection had been filed. As if all this isn't bad enough, the Biden-supported legalization prioritized credit card debt payments over child support repayment. Ugh. I wonder why he did that. Could it have anything to do with this? Say it ain't so, Joe. Say it ain't so. He shouldn't be called Uncle Joe. He should be called Uncle Wall Street. So, unfortunately, I don't think, for example, here's a great example. Earlier today, I went to a friend of mine's house on Long Island. His grandfather died, so I wanted to stop by and talk to him. And in the Jewish religion, they have something called Shiva. So there were a lot of people there. So I started talking to my friend, about Trump and politics, whatever. And somebody overheard it and was like, "Oh, do you think Biden's going to run? I like him." She was a nice woman. So I said to the woman, "Oh, Joe Biden's not exactly the most progressive." And he's like, "I thought he was a good vice president." I'm like, "Well, did you know X, Y, Z, Z, Z?" It looked like her face went blank. She's like, "Oh, I didn't know those things. He voted for the Iraq War? Oh, he wrote that bill? I didn't even know that bill existed." This is what I'm telling you. when the majority of people in this country are not lacking compassion. Most people have no fucking clue what's going on. No clue of the real record of these politicians, because the corporate media makes sure that they are left brainwashed and dumb. And frankly, folks, I have no reporting to indicate this. But straight up, there's been some creepy pictures of Joe Biden out there. There's been some creepy pictures, if you know what I'm saying. I've seen some pictures with him kissing little girls. I don't like it. I don't like it. I'm not accusing him of anything, but I'm just saying there's been some weird photos of him out there. So, what is all this propaganda about Joe Biden about? And of course, if I don't know if Obama's going to try to stop him from running, but if Biden runs, you would have to assume Obama's going to back him. But does anybody's records actually matter? Does anybody's record of what they voted for or what they sponsored or what bills they wrote matter anymore? This idea that David Sirota is attacking Beto O'Rourke for writing about his record, or this idea that Joe Biden is popular among millennials, that Joe Biden is like middle-class Joe that's been pushed by CNN. And by the way, if Joe Biden became the nominee, Trump is going to do the same thing to Joe that he did to Hillary. Crooked Hillary, call him, sideways Joe, whatever you want to call him. His record speaks for itself. It's a giant, excuse my French, ladies, blowjob to finance, to business, to Wall Street, to big pharma, to fossil fuels, real estate developers. And frankly, I think Bernie Sanders would wipe the floor with him. He would wipe the floor with him. This is why it's going to be important, as I advocate for status quo. There's the GoFundMe link. We need to grow our funding so we could be in the field to counter this propaganda. Because this is propaganda. What the New York Times is doing is they're talking to advisors from Joe Biden. They're writing down notes as they're on the phone with Joe Biden's advisors. Joe Biden's advisors or Joe Biden himself are giving them talking points, and they're just regurgitating it. The New York Times I guarantee you, the New York Times has never even looked at opensecrets.org because they don't give a shit. They don't care that these politicians are corrupt. They don't care that these politicians are bought off. They don't care that these politicians are servants of corporations and Wall Street. They don't care. You want to know why? Because the New York Times, CNN, MSNBC are servants of them too. They're all in this racket together. And that's why you need independent media. That is why you need independent media.